Have you ever been in a situation where you try to overcome something that is difficult or something that you thought that you will be able to accomplish, but it give you a lot of difficulty in accomplishing it? But at the end of the day, you continue fighting and then you got the victory over it or you accomplish it. Well, so it is with this psalm with David, and we are going to be looking at this in the Dixon's devotions. Good morning, saints, and welcome to the Dixon's devotions with Pastor Dixon. Today we are going to be looking at Psalms chapter 60. Psalms chapter 60. This psalm is centered around when David was fighting a battle in the east, around Aremia, and around the Edom or Edomia. We can also see the backdrop to this psalm in 2 Samuel chapter 8 and also 1 Chronicles chapter 18. But before we go any further into the details, please remember, if you have not subscribed or like our YouTube channel, please do so and also leave a comment and tell a friend. On the heading or introduction to the psalm, you see to the chief musicians, and this indicate that this psalm was not written by the chief musician, but it was written to the chief musician, and most people think it was David again who composed the psalm and give it to the chief musician to put music or lyrics to the psalm. Now we also see the phrase here upon Sushon Edoth, and this means properly lily or of testimony, lily of testimony. The word Shushan means lily. Some people think that it's a musical instrument that open up like a lily, like a trumpet, a trombone, or one of those kind of instrument. And also when we look at the phrase here, Edot, it can also means testimony, law, precepts, revelation. It's mostly applied to the testimony of God, the law of God, and we can see that in Psalms chapter 19:7, 2 Kings 11:12, and sometimes the Ark of the Covenant was called the testimony because it contains the law of the 10 commandments inside of it. Some commentators believe that the term the lily of the law means the beauty of the law, but some disagree because they're saying that this psalm speaks nothing concerning the law. That's why I believe it was an instrument that shaped like a lily, and also that's what it's all about. And again we see the word here miktan, where you can see that in Psalms chapter 16 1:11, and this word here miktan indicates teaching or psalms that is adapted to teaching, unlike the word mishkal there which means word. And so it is the miktan of David, or teaching of David to teach. So we see right here, this is giving instruction to teach a lesson or to teach a principle. This psalm is said to be composed by David when his army battled and strove a long time against Aremia, and also against Aram Zobah, and it gave Joab the credit when Joab returned and smote in the valley of Salt 12,000. As I said before, we can see this in 2 Samuel chapter 8 and 1 Chronicles chapter 18. Now let's go to these passages so that we can get the backdrop of this psalm. In 2 Samuel chapter 8, it described that David defeated the Philistines and took some villages and cities from them. And also he defeated the Moabites. And the Bible said that David measured them every 2 feet, men 2 feet, he killed them, and everyone who was more than 3 feet long, he let them live, and they became subjugated to him, and they became his slave. Then David went on and defeated Hadadadzah, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah. This is one of the names mentioned in the title of the psalm, when he went to restore his monument at the Euphrates River. Now, David captured 1,000 of his chariots, 7,000 charioteers, and 20,000 foot soldiers. He hamstrung all but 100 of his charioteers. Reading here in the Bible, and we see what's going on here. That's verse 3 and of chapter 8 down. So David did all of this, and as a result of that, when the Arameans heard of what David was doing, they sent soldiers to help Hadadadzah, king of Zobah. But at the same time, David struck down 22,000 of them, and he put garrisons in the Aramean kingdom of Damascus, and the Arameans became subject to him and brought tribute, and the Lord gave David victory wherever he went. So we see that right there. So right there it talk about that. Now when we go down to verse 11, David also went and he wrought a victory over the Edomites, but the Edomites gave him a lot of trouble. He had difficulty defeated the Edomites, but eventually he was able to overtake them. And as a result, in verse 11, King David dedicated these articles to the Lord, as he has done with the silver and the gold from all the nation he had subdued, Edom and Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, and the Amalek. He also dedicated the plunder taken from Hadadadzah, son of Rehob, king of Zobah. Now, after that, David became famous in verse 13, and David became famous after he returned from striking down 18,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt. Now, and you can read the rest of the passage to see what happened, but these are some nations in the east that David was fighting against, and he had some problem. He gained great victory, and it seemed as though he had problem with Edom, and we're going to talk more about that. Now let's look at 1 Chronicles chapter 18 and see what it said, and it gives you a little backdrop. In the course of time, David defeated the Philistines again, subdued some villages under the control. David defeated the Moabites, and David defeated Hadadadzah, king of Zobah. We know that. And these are located in the east, near to the Euphrates River. David, verse 3, you can see that David captured thousands of his charioteers, 7,000 charioteers, and 20,000 foot soldiers. He hamstrung all but 100 of the charioteer horses. And we saw the Arameans again. He gave this the same situation. The Arameans, when they heard this, they went down to help Hadadadzah, king of Zobah, and David struck down 22,000 of them and put garrison in Aramean kingdom of Damascus, and the Aramean became subject to him. But in verse 7, we saw that David took all the gold and everything like that, and he dedicated them to the building of the temple. Now, it's also said in verse 12, Abishai, son of Zeruiah, struck down 18,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt. This is where he were able to capture the Edomites, and he put garrisons in Edom, and all the Edomites became subject to David. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. Here, in the Psalm heading, it said when Joab returned, and here we see Abishai. Abishai is Joab's brother, and we know Joab was the general, the leader of David's army. So most likely Joab was the leading, but Abishai was the one who defeated them. But nevertheless, Joab got the credit. But still, even though Joab got the credit, when he returned with the army, we don't know if David was there. But when they struck Edom, it seemed as though when David went to fight first, he had problem with Edom. When Joab went out, it seemed as though David was not there, and Joab and his brother Abishai won the victory. And therefore Joab, because he was the leader of the army, got credit when Joab returned. But nevertheless, David get the overall credit because he was the king, and these were subjugated to him, they were underneath him. So Joab, because Joab won the victory, David, as being king and leader, he would get also the credit. So this is the backdrop of the psalm, and as we go into the psalms proper, we're going to see by understanding this background how this psalm makes sense. Now let's go into the psalm. Now when we look at the heading of the psalm, it said 18,000 were killed in the battle, but in both 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles it said 12,000, and some people believe that this is a transcribed error, but some indicate there is no indication of such error. But probably the psalmist who wrote the heading had it a little off, but we cannot determine the situation there. But both 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicle indicate 12,000, where the heading of the psalm says 18,000. So in spite of that, but nevertheless, there was a big battle, and probably, as I said, the author, the scribe, probably made a mistake, but we cannot verify all of that. Nevertheless, we cannot be certain of the records that they were looking at to make prediction that it was an error. The psalm starts out with a rejection and a defeat. Here the psalmist, which we think is David, is saying, "Oh God, you have rejected us. You have broken us. You have been angry. Oh, restore us." Verse 1. And it seems as though that David was fighting these armies, these nations, for a long time, and at one point David's army suffered some kind of defeat. And as I said, they could not root out these armies, enemies in the east, and it was a battle all the time. It was a battle. You remember when David got in the sin with Bathsheba, we also remember that it was this very Arameans that David was fighting against. So it seems as though there had been a long one. There are times that the Arameans gained victory, and David began with, as I said, an idea of defeat, and he couldn't understand why he couldn't defeat these armies. And most people think that the Battle of Aramea took place during the time when David had an affair with Bathsheba, and being the king, his sin affected the entire nation and caused Israel also to lose. Remember, Joab was at the time fighting when David was home. So this could be a possibility. We do not know. But nevertheless, we see here a sense of rejection by God, and David is saying, oh God, you have rejected us, you have broken us. Have you ever been in a situation when you're trying to overcome this problem, but you're being defeated by this problem that been dogging you? And so it is here. You have been angry, oh restore us. And David believed the defeat was because of God's anger towards Israel for whatever the situation was. Verse 2, you have made the land quake, you have split it open. And he's saying, God, because of the defeat from this our enemies, you made the land quake, you split it open. Heal its breaches for its tatters, for its shaking. Heal the breaches like when you have a wall and the enemy were able to break down some holes in the wall and get to these are the breaches. For it tatters, so the defense is shaken. And this is what he's talking about. Verse 3, you have made your people experience hardship. Because of that, it was very difficult, man, to defeat these enemies. You ever have some besetting sin in your life, you got it hard to defeat. So it is these armies, David had it difficult. It was hard. It make it hard and difficult. You make us experience hardship. We lost a lot during these battles. You have given us wine to drink that make us stagger. In other words, like, boy, we are staggering over these enemy. You make us weak like drunken men in our fighting. God, shut up. You have given a banner to those who fear you. And David in verse 4 said, Lord, those who fear you, give us a banner. A banner was like, in those days they have those big banners with writing on them to show strength and victory. You have given us a banner, Lord, to those who fear you. And we fear you. Those other nations do not fear you. But why are they excelling? What have we done that it may be displayed because of truth? And David is saying, Lord, we have the truth. We know we here in Israel have the truth, Lord. And we have served you, we fear you, but these nations do not have the truth. They serve the false God. But Lord, why can't we defeat these enemies? That your beloved may be delivered. Lord, we have the truth. We fear you. And, stand up for us so that we might be delivered. Because we have the truth. Israel is your beloved. That we might be delivered. And he said, we have the truth. Selah in verse 4. Selah means stop and meditate. Stop and think about that. God, your banner is those who fear you too. We have the truth. So why aren't we, as I said, winning the victory? And this is the first part of the outline here. An explanation of difficulty or defeat. You see, it ends with Selah, and most of the points end with Selah, the outline of the psalm. Verse 5, that your beloved may be delivered. Save with your right hand and answer us. David now is a plea for God now to answer Israel, to come and fight for Israel. We see the first part from verse 1 to verse 4 deals with the struggle of defeat. Here now is a plea for God deliverance. A plea for God deliverance. That your beloved may be delivered. Save with your right hand and answer us. God has spoken in his holiness. God has spoken in his holiness. David is saying, Lord, deliver us. Deliver your beloved. In your holiness you have spoken. I will exalt. I will portion out Shakim and measure out the valley of Sukkot. Now here is David said, God will exalt us. He will portion out Shakim. He will measure out the valley of Sukkot. Gilad is mine. Manasseh is mine. Ephraim also is the helmet of my head. Judah is my scepter, Moab is my wash bowl. So we see right there, you know that when Judah, Base and Jacob, when he was blessing his children, he made Judah his scepter, and he said Moab is my wash bowl. Who is the Moabites? The Moabites are the family of Israel by Lot. Remember Abraham's nephew Lot, his descendants through incest beget Moab and also Ammon, the Ammonites and the Moabites. That's why we see that David was able to root them out. Now, and he called Moab his wash bowl. Over Edom, who is Edom? Edom, I shall throw my shoe. I shall throw my shoe after Edom. It's also indicated that David have not conquered the Edomites yet. He will throw his shoe after them, but eventually we see he captured them. Who is the Edomites? Remember, the Edomites are also where you get from Esau. They are descendants of Esau, Jacob's brother, Israel brother nation. But yet we know that David here is going to conquer the Edomites and he will throw his shoe after them. You know, it's all like to say, man, I want to throw my shoe, they vex me, man, so I want to throw my shoe after them. And eventually he conquered them. He said, over Edom I will throw my shoe. Shout loud, O Philistia, because of me. Remember, when we look at the introduction, David defeated the Philistines and captured these villages. Then he went after Moab, he went after Aremia, and he went after Edom, and he was able to capture these cities, to capture these villages. So Philistia, which is Israel's longtime enemy, they will shout because of me. Who will bring me into the besieged city? He said, who will bring me into this besieged city of Philistines and the Edomites? Who is the question? And the answer is the Lord. Who will lead me to Edom? You hear, who will lead me to Edom? I will cast my shoe. At that time, he did not defeat Edom. Edom was giving him a lot of trouble. And he said, Lord, who will lead me into Edom? And he said, have not you yourself, O God, rejected us? David feel like, tangling with the Edomites and were defeated. He believed God rejected them for whatever reason. He said, who will lead us here? Who will lead us? And the answer is God. Have you not yourself, O God, rejected us? And will you not go forth with our armies, O God? Will you not go forth? It is a question. Lord, we want you to go with us. We cannot gain the victory without you. Verse 11, oh, give us help against the adversary. For deliverance by man is in vain. He said, God, we want your help, because deliverance by man is vain. It's not going to last. But when you deliver us, Lord, it's going to be lasting and it's going to be meaningful. Lord, deliverance from man is in vain, because man will turn on you. This same man who went and helped you to deliver the city will turn on you. Through God we shall do valiantly. He said, to God we shall do valiantly. To God we shall be victorious. To God we shall win the victory. And he tell us that our strength is in the Lord. A lot of time we put our trust in man to deliver us. But put your trust in God, because when man help you, they're going to talk you. They're going to say all kind of things for you. When they want something, they're going to bring you down. When you go against them, they're going to bring you down. They're going to say, you remember when? And all these things. But when God help you, God will secure you. And it is He who will tread down our adversary. God is the one who's going to finally tread down the adversary, not man. The battles that you're fighting in your life, the strongholds, the sins that easily beset you. Now, when we look at these wars against nations from a national point of view, we're looking at these enemy, but in our lives today as Christians, these are spiritual strongholds that hold us down, the sins that beset us. God is going to give us the victory. Not all these man-made help and rehabilitation and all these 12 help steps situation, but when God trusts in God and his power, and he will bring down these strongholds. And we know when we look at the scripture, David eventually gained the victory when he said, when Joab came back and defeated the Edomites and the Arameans in the Valley of Salt. And we know that Valley of Salt, some people believe that Valley of Salt is where by the Dead Sea area, and there was a mountain of salt there, and that mountain of salt there was divided Edom from Israel. Some believe that this Valley of Salt was around Arabia area. When rain fall, they have some pools that develop, and when those pools dry, they left some crescent salt. But most people think is in the south, where the Dead Sea meets Israel, and there is a mountain of salt which separate Edom from Israel, and there that Joab won the victory, and his brother Abishai, but yet it was ascribed to David because David was the king. He said who will go out, and these were his general, and he organized the fight and the battle, and sometimes when they had problem they sent to David, and David tell him what to do. But nevertheless, it was the victory ascribed to David. And when you look at 2 Samuel chapter 8 and 1 Chronicles chapter 18, it said after that David became strong. So you see, we might be fighting battles in our lives, spiritual battles, strongholds as the Bible call them. We call them addictions, but in the Bible they are known as strongholds. But when we put our trust in God, God will grant us the victory. So we need to continue to serve and trust God no matter what. How hard sometimes we have some battles, some strongholds that hard and difficult to root out. But trust God and he will grant us the victory. Saints, have a wonderful day, and may the Lord blessings be with you.